All set.
All righty, good afternoon and happy Monday to everybody. So we've got our standard agenda plus at least one extra item. And we'll start with finance. Councilmember Evans.
Yes, Madam President. A lot of the conversations I won't reiterate it because I know we talked about them, and the questions that were already asked were stuff coming through finance that we discussed in agenda review on Thursday. I would just say one piece of note in terms of legislation was the convention center legislation that was submitted by both former Mayor Warren and myself. That was submitted. So that was one that's a piece of legislation that was in the packet. The other thing I just wanted to mention was the minimum wage legislation. I don't want to forget about that. So we need to make sure that we pull that from being held and voting on that this month because we were able to hold it because it wasn't going to take effect until January 1st. So want to make sure that that gets out. And I know there were conversations that were going back and forth. I think we got answers to those conversations. So I want to make sure that we get that minimum wage legislation moved this month as well. Yeah, so those were the things that I wanted to mention from the committee.
We did get answers on the minimum wage piece, and there was another amendment or a piece that Councilmember Patterson wanted, and we got answers on that as well. Councilmember Patterson, are you all set with that? Wanting to have the universal?
Well, I'm going to reach out. So Acting Corporation Counsel Beath was very informative in his email response. Like I said in some of our conversations earlier, I'm not going to I have no interest in having the perfect be the enemy of the good. I'm going to reach out to Mayor Smith and see if within the scope of his authority, he's willing to make that change. If he is, great. If not, then like I said, I'm not going to let the good be, I'm not going to let the great be the enemy of the good. So it is my firm belief that we should vote on that legislation regardless, but I'm still going to ask.
Can't hurt to ask.
Okay.
But I do have a question, just a general question about the conventions. Well, the it's not really the convention that's set in legislation. I'm in favor of the parking garage, but the other item regarding 120 East Main, I'm not opposed to it. I'm just like, why would we do this? I mean, why wouldn't we just spend that money at the convention center? We aren't taking an ownership stake in the property, so why would we do this?
Well, it gets us. It demonstrates our commitment to that, to seeing that 120 East Ave revitalized, because the challenge is that it affects the convention center in such a major way, because most conventions want the hotel want a hotel connected. So this says, hey, let's get other investments there. So if other investments don't come, this ain't gonna go nowhere. So the hope is that by us showing our commitment, hopefully we can leverage other state dollars, and that other folks involved with this will be able to put forth dollars to move this along. Otherwise, we'll have to go back to the drawing board. But it's just been that pink hotel, something's got to be done about it, because it's killing the convention. It's going to kill the convention center once the convention center is up and running again, if something doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so with the housing proposals attached to it, is that an adaptive reuse of the existing structure as is, or are they looking to demo and rebuild? What is
I think that's TBD, but yes, it would be it could either be adaptive or rebuild. I think that's kind of to be determined.
Okay. So all we're really doing then is we're adding to the capital stack for future development.
Right. Right.
Okay.
And I mean, and this is the asterisk that if, you know, the private or other funds don't come in, ain't nothing going to happen there, which wouldn't be good for us. But the hope is that this will spur something being done. My concern was just, you know, we just can't have that sitting there like that. Like, you know, here, we as a city are saying, hey, look, here's what we are willing to do. And we're demonstrating that to the public as well as other government entities and private sector. Now it's time for other people to come to the table and do something. And then if they don't, then we may have to, you know, go to our plan B.
Okay. All right. So well, okay. Those are the questions I needed answered, and I get it. And you know, it's in the Northeast. So I'm already kind of leaning toward but it's kind of like, well, why are we doing?
Right. No, I get it.
So yeah. Okay. So I get it. That's not crazy.
I'm really glad that we're taking affirmative but cautious measures regarding that development, because everybody on this call should remember the Hyatt.
Oh God! Remember it was half built for like 20 years.
20, yeah, forever.
Yeah, we don't need that. We don't need another one of those. I don't think that the city was as aggressive in getting that moved as we possibly could have been. Different times, different measures. But I'm really glad that we're trying to be more assertive in getting some movement on that Riverside building, because it's been sort of doomed. Every 2-3 years, you know, is another owner or another mess was what it was. So you all will just have to keep an eye on that, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I think the commitment to the capital stack, with the understanding that if don't happen,
it don't go.
The dollars we can go back to, it's you know, there's not as much risk. So this is a good thing. I think it's a good thing for us to do. So
yeah. Okay. PPW.
We skipped NBD.
I was going to say, like, did we fall off?
Sherry, go ahead.
You're like that kid around here, like no soup for you. Nothing new.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Patterson. I'm sorry. And then I don't know if you wanted me to mention too the impending legislation for the search warrant for police chief that might be coming.
Please do, please.
Yeah. So I told Council President Scott that might be coming, but it just may come as a message of necessity. We're just trying to make sure the price is right before we give it to council. So.
Good. We'll look forward to getting that. Okay.
All right. So NBD, everybody, you guys, we've already done agenda review, so there's nothing new, nothing crazy there. Any questions, concerns, comments? That's all I got.
So, Mike, what did we do with the situation on, I'm gonna say Sullivan Street, I might be wrong, the open air situation? Something came through again more recently.
Well, you talking about Sullivan or Loomis?
Maybe it's Loomis.
So look, we're still talking. There was a meeting that was held that I'm just going to leave it at there was a meeting that was held. I had a chance to review the video. I shared it around with some other folks in the video. Long story short, I as a district council member for the Northeast, where this open air shooting gallery and heroin market is located, it is not a homeless encampment. It is exactly as I characterized it.
Yeah.
I am totally in favor of getting the folks who are suffering from substance abuse all the help and support that they need. And with that said, I am totally committed to that being closed down and cleaned out again. This is not.
Lost your sound. Lost your sound.
You've gone to mute, Mike.
I think his other line got muted
Uh,
somehow.
where's-
go tell him.
It's also not appropriate.
Oh, here he comes. Okay, we lost you for like a minute, Mike.
Okay.
Your
I
sound.
said, well, there's some noise in the background. But it is also not appropriate for my constituents to be victimized by all of these needles and other foolishness that's going on that's caused by this. So, I have nothing but love for the people, and I want to get all the resources we can to get them the help that they need. But that staying there is not an option. And this is where I make Mitch mad. In the course of the meeting, it was mentioned like, oh, well, you could go to Peace Village. And I'm like, yeah, you can go to Peace Village. Because Peace Village is not a residential neighborhood, which is going to, sorry, Mitch. No, just tell Dawn to call me. So
I do think it's part of it is part of a larger conversation that includes Peace Village, that includes what's happening in the Civic Center garage, and that ultimately I think it feels like the city and the county are regularly approaching it with different perspectives, with different strategies, and it's not leading us anywhere. So I do think that at the end of the day, we need to consider having a little bit more of a unified strategy for how to address these issues collectively, and it can't be city or county by themselves. And I've already had this conversation with Commissioner Kirkmeyer as well because of some of the stuff with Peace Village. So maybe we can find some resolution on this in the next couple of weeks.
well, let me be clear about something. A homeless encampment is one thing. An open air shooting gallery is another thing. So to the degree that it's a homeless encampment and we're trying to house folks who are homeless, that's actually the county function. I might throw that out there again. And we should be pushing them to do that. As far as substance use disorder and acceptable places to do it, well, quite frankly, there are no acceptable places to do it. And I get it. Shame has driven a lot of these folks down to where they're unknown, where they think it's safe for them to do what they're doing. Well, just because we don't know you doesn't mean that we accept this, and your actions are in fact victimizing us. So it's a problem and we need to solve it, but I don't want to conflate one with the other. Homelessness is one thing. Substance use disorder and where you do it is another thing. And there are folks, and even on that call that I shared around, there were folks in the advocacy community that were going, nah, we don't want to be in a house because we want to be somewhere collective so we can look out for each other. Well, that's all well and good, baby. But, and Mitch, I'm not trying to cause trouble for Peace Village. I'm not, but at the same time, I can't have this in a residential neighborhood. And I would
I'm not conflating the two things. Actually, they're conflated by themselves sometimes. Peace Village has become one of the major issues with Peace Village is that the residents there and PCHO, who has an ESG contract with the city to do outreach there, have all reported that it has become an incredibly dangerous place for people to be, and all these issues are linked. So I actually do want us to have a more singular strategy for how we deal with them and how we have appropriate outreach and how we deal with whatever it is we have to deal with, whether it's housing programs or law enforcement or the outreach that PCHO is doing. But I don't want to keep treating these places as though they are serving these completely distinct populations when we know there's actually a general confluence of them. And right now, Peace Village, by all accounts, is an incredibly unsafe place for people to stay, which is problematic because it was the city under the previous administration who really encouraged it to exist under the guise of that this is going to be a self-policing community. That was precisely what was stated. So we really need to be more mindful about how we are going to approach this collectively. I think what's happening on Loomis Street, what happens at Peace Village, need to be considered part of a continuum we have a strategy for.
what specifically is that is making Peace Village now so unsafe? If you don't mind, I'm sorry, I don't want to get too far into it, but I gotta ask you here.
That people who are staying there are oftentimes using it as a open air shooting gallery, that there's a lot of drug use there, that there's weapons there, that there has been some carjackings that have wound up with cars there. There's just a lot of activity, and there's not, and the self-policing nature of it that was described by Mayor Warren and some of the advocates from at the time it was mostly St. Joe's and House of Mercy. That is not what is happening at the moment. So there's conversations that that I'm trying to have with PCHO, who's doing a lot of the outreach right now, of how we appropriately fund outreach, how we think about what's happening at the Civic Center garage as, again, another place where this stuff is happening, and how the city and the county can collectively fund outreach services that are going to help direct people to the place that is most suitable for them, and where there's really dangerous and unsafe behavior, that it's addressed in the appropriate ways as well.
Well, let's get together with Nick and talk.
Yeah, let's do it.
If I can jump in on this.
Miguel, Councilmember Melendez, let me go to Councilmember Pago first, please.
Appreciate that. Sorry, I would love to see, has there been conversation regarding having a safe space for these people to go to shoot up? I'm certainly not a proponent of this, but the thing that I am opposed to is the amount of needles being found in parks and in locations where there's lots of kids. So has there been conversations regarding having places in those areas where people can go inside, do what they got to do with staff that can provide them with the oversight and making sure that they do it in a safe way, and so that it keeps the needles off the streets? Is that conversation being had right now, Councilmember Gruber? I would think that's probably something you might have had conversations with, or Councilmember Patterson. I don't know.
Well, I'll plain and simple no. And I'm at no because, quite honestly, we're not trying to encourage this behavior. Look, we especially with Loomis Street, we've got city crews, PCHO, Recovery Always, Trillium. We got everybody going through there to collect needles. We got needle boxes all over the place, and we still got needles all over the place. So the issue is not, hey, if we had a safe place to go. The issue is y'all need to go home and do it there. So I'm not interested in taking on, personally, I'm not interested in the city of Rochester taking on that further burden unless the suburban communities are willing to go first, because many of the folks who are using heroin in our community do not live in our community. So I'm not trying to give them another attractive nuisance to take advantage of. My heart bleeds, but so that's my.
I would just say that that is Councilmember Patterson's answer, and I do feel differently than him. But the answer to your question, Councilmember Pia, was that there are not these conversations happening. There really aren't. In part because I do think that the city and the county regularly get into this conversation of whose responsibility is it, and there just isn't a larger strategic conversation about all these things. And there was. I give Councilmember Patterson, I think it was prior to Miguel being on council, but Miguel and a whole bunch of other people credit for organizing what I thought was a very useful conversation with Trillium probably 2 years ago now, this pre-pandemic for sure, where there have been some semblance of these conversations, but they don't happen regularly enough. The funding that everybody wants to put towards these different things are done in isolation, and we don't find larger, more sustainable solutions. So I really hope that changes starting now.
I just to sound off on that as well, I completely agree that in my opinion, the county has not provided the amount of funding that I would like to see in terms of this mental health and the drug problem. And Councilmember Patterson, I believe you're absolutely right. I've seen many people drive into certain areas, do the drug transactions, do the drugs, and then go right to work a lot of times. It's happening in my neighborhood as well. And it's very sad to see. So I just hope we have conversations about it. I know that you guys have been doing a great job with it. It's just not something that's for me, but I'm definitely down to be part of the conversation at least.
Councilmember Melendez?
Yeah, so in a similar vein of where we landed there, I think that a couple things. So one, if we ever get to a place where we're looking at safe injection sites or whatever you want to call it, for me, it has to start where the problem originates from first. And that is, frankly, the suburban community. They have to take some ownership of this kind of thing. I also don't think it can be in a residential neighborhood. We have to find a location that, I don't know if it's a hospital campus or what it is, but something that's outside of the day-to-day life of everyday citizens of Rochester. And then when it comes to this specific issue of dealing with the challenges around substance use disorder and the comorbidity with homelessness and what we're seeing with the open air drug trade, I think that we have to have a balanced approach where, one, we certainly want to provide the services that are necessary and required to help someone, but then also not enable the activity to remain in the same locations chronically forever. And that's been the problem, is the same corridors have been addressing this challenge for so long. And it's been disproportionately impacting, Mike Patterson's district for one, and now we're seeing it pretty heavy in Councilmember Peel's district as well. I was looking at overdose data, and the corner of Dewey and Driving Park, for example, is one of the hottest spots in the city right now for overdoses. So it's shifting, it's changing, it's becoming more problematic. And what I don't want to do as a council is enable it to stay wherever it is. We have to have strategies that address the challenges, that help people, but at the same time gets to an end game of it can't be here.
Yeah, can I just say, Madam President, here's the thing, and people need to understand this. This would never be allowed to happen in Pittsford or Brighton or anywhere else. So, Rochester is no different. And yes, we want to help. My father worked for years with this population, so I know it well. He came home every day with stories about this. So Loomis Street, other places, nothing new to me. But we cannot condone it in our community. We just can't. Obviously, we want to start with the therapeutic piece. We want to make sure we do that. But we got to have it. We can't have a top tolerance and oftentimes we have folks coming in from the suburbs with their backpacks. I saw it on North Clinton. Shooting up, doing all types of other things, bringing these issues into the city. It's not just. I'm not saying it's the suburbs. It's everywhere. But I think we do have to say that we're not going to tolerate it, but strike the right balance where we make sure that we're getting people the support that they need. Because there are kids that are seeing this. My kids witnessed this. I was taking them to music class. They witnessed someone on our way. I won't say what street. We're driving down a city street. They witnessed people shooting up. So
Wow.
we cannot tolerate this. My boys are not going to be subject to this, and we're going to get people help. But at the same time, we can't just turn a blind eye to it because it is really a really, really serious problem, and it's something that people are reaching out on. So I think it's easier said than done, obviously, but the question for us has to be, how do we strike the right balance?
Yeah.
And one final thought, if I may, the money that we are receiving from the settlement, opioid settlement funds, we should be targeting that towards the areas that have been disproportionately impacted for a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to advocate for that whenever we receive that money, that we do that.
Good point.
And that includes law enforcement, because we still need to chase the deal.
Councilmember Peel, you had something else to add?
That was kind of the that last part with the dealers. They're cutting it with some, really disgusting stuff out there that's putting a lot of lives. People shouldn't be doing drugs to begin with, but on top of that, when they're purchasing these drugs, they have an expectation that they're not cutting it with, chemicals that is going to kill them. So that's the other aspect of it as well. It's, keeping it cleaner, but shouldn't be doing drugs to begin with.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Hey, everybody. Sorry I'm late. Miguel, has Ibero done any work around, or have we as a body in the past studying what other cities have done around safe injection sites and the data that's come out of that?
Yes, I could speak for Ibero. We definitely have, and we've had a lot of conversations around that. And I think that the key is in other cities and other places, it's typically not done in a residential neighborhood. So that's the one thing that I would take away from it.
So New York City just set one up. I don't know if it's this past week. It was in a news article last week. I don't know how long ago they said it, but it was an interesting looking site. I can't imagine where that would have been though. Okay, so let's move on to PPW.
Sure. The first couple pieces are fairly big and exciting. One is the Civil Rights Park over at Baden. I will say I think it's wonderful. I think obviously the legacy of Minister Florence deserves celebration like this. There's still not a whole lot of plans as to what things are going to look like. I asked for schematics and some idea of kind of how the entirety of Baden Street is going to, or Baden Park, pardon me, is going to look. And there's not a lot of meat to the bone yet, but this is the city allocating $500,000 that would match $500,000 that the state delegation has already put forward. There's already some work around Cornhill navigation and getting some really exciting stuff back in terms of activating the waterway over by the West River Wall. And then there's a number of pieces related to improvements of fire halls, firehouses, but there's nothing else that I think really jumps out unless anyone had any questions or things they wanted to discuss.
Just a quick question for you, Mitch, about 440 DES 05, East Main Street Bridge over the CSX Amtrak. Didn't we just complete this project?
Let me get to
Or is this another project? Because I go over that bridge 5 times a day, easy, and I could swear that we just finished this work.
Yeah,
And-
this is just getting the reimbursements for it.
That's it.
Yep.
Okay, so that's all for the committee since the PRHS is not here, right? So the next item that we have is for executive session in order to go into executive session to discuss a staff matter. Is there a motion?
Actually,
Is it
Second.
not the next item, Katie?
No, it is, but Councilmember Lupian was saying something.
yeah, if going to executive session is maybe the last thing that we do, and maybe I missed it, but I had also wanted to talk about the status of good cause.
It's not. We'll come back from executive session. We still have to go through reports for boards and commissions.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Patterson, you moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?